I'm joined by Valarie Tarasuk, Professor and Associate Chair of Graduate Education in the Department of Nutritional Sciences and Temerity Faculty of Medicine at University of Toronto. Thank you very much for being with us. So in terms of the numbers that we're looking at today, I mean, we're already paying more for all the things, that we just listed. Do you think that will continue to rise, whether it's gas or food?
It's very, very worrisome. I mean, I think all the projections are that, yes, prices can be expected to continue to rise. And that is going to put a lot of hardship on some families in this country.
So, Valarie, what about those families that's, in terms of hardship, the ones that, are already struggling? I mean, we've been hearing right across the country that food banks, for example, are busier.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we know that somewhere around 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 Canadian households experience food insecurity, so inadequate or insecure access to food because of a lack of money. And who knows how many other Canadians there are that are just on the cusp. And so a rise in prices of basic needs can only make these people's lives harder, right? They're already stretched, they're struggling to make ends meet. This is only going to make that harder. What's it going to look like? Well, I think we can expect to see people compromising more in terms of the quality of their diets. It's worrisome to think of where this will keep going. But yeah, it's a major, major concern that we have so many Canadians already struggling to make ends meet and now going to a grocery store and facing higher prices.
Yeah, and the choices, as you say, that, they might have to change their choices, or they may, in terms of expensive food, grocery stores, or fast food chains, that kind of thing. How big of an impact will that be on consumer trends?
Well, I don't know. I mean, part of this really depends on how our governments respond, right? Because we're all reading in news from Statistics Canada about this unprecedented level of inflation. And so both the provincial and federal governments have now a responsibility to think through what's going to happen. I mean, the people who will be most vulnerable are those whose incomes aren't indexed to the cost of living. So many people in Canada, including, for example, seniors, have income sources that are indexed to inflation. So when there is a steady rise in inflation, their incomes go up to help them buffer the higher costs that they encounter in grocery stores, among other places. But we have a whole swath of Canadians that don't have that advantage. So people on social assistance in most parts of the country, low-wage workers, minimum wage workers. In most parts of the country, these people's incomes will not automatically rise as a way to accommodate the increased pressures created by this absolutely unprecedented level of inflation. But that's, I think, the question going forward. What's going to happen? Well, it partly depends on how federal and provincial governments respond. Is it time now? I hope they will see that it is time now to take a sober look at policies related to some of these income sources that right now have no buffer in them for cost of living.
Yeah, and it's not going to end anytime soon. I mean, really, they're forecasting well into the winter. Mm-hmm.
Inflation like this really just casts the spotlight on public policies that have been leaving some low-income Canadians vulnerable for a while. But now going forward, I think it really behooves the federal government and the provinces to take a look at where do they have income support programs that are not indexed to inflation, and now is the time to have that conversation about getting these programs indexed.
Valarie Tarasuk, I appreciate your expertise, your thoughts. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.